your opening chapter in your book is about the underlying philosophy of this. So, the Frankfurt School and how there was a real philosophical kind of Marxist-based school that eventually came to America. And I think we're seeing it play its way out. So I was hoping you could kind of just track the history of this, because we didn't go from like John Adams and the Founding Fathers to woke ideology. There's a lot of stuff that happened in between. Can you kind of chart that out a little bit of how like this Marxist Hegelian philosophy? I mean, we can get a little nerdy on the Hegelian philosophy, but it's very pertinent if you understand conflict theory and whatnot. So go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of strands but to pick up. But so the Frankfurt School, just starting there, that was an Institute of Social Research in Frankfurt, Germany, that was put together or came together after they realized that the Marxist revolution, which Marx had proclaimed would be inevitable, and they all thought was inevitable, hadn't really succeeded to the degree that they expected it to. So they formed this institute in order to analyze, well, what happened, what went wrong, and what can we do better. They were Marxists, but they were also Freudians primarily.
Oh, gosh,
so
that's right.
Combination.
That's a powerful combo to mess up a human being.
Oh, gosh. I know. So they matriculated to the United States in 1935.
Do you have any idea how that happened? Like, does that mean when they matriculated, does that mean that there was just some professors at a college that relocated and went to teach at Harvard or something? Like, I don't know really what that means.
It wasn't really college. When they came to Columbia, they were adjacent to Columbia, but they weren't, professors at Columbia. They were, it's a school, but it was more of an institute, or like almost like a think tank. In a way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of them were fleeing, the rising anti-Semitism and when they left Europe. So
a lot of these were Marxist Jewish people, probably that were fleeing Jewish persecution.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they came adjacent to Columbia, and one of the most powerful. So they were trying to similar to. The Italian Gramsci, who understood that, the problem is that this is not going to be a revolution that's just going to be fought in the streets and triumphed in some sort of traditional kind of conflict way. It has to be promulgated through the institutions and the levers of who hold the levers of culture.
Yeah.
So the academy, the school system, media, culture.
They're so much more strategic than we are.
Exactly. Yeah. And, the Long March to the Institutions was a saying for a good reason, that they understood this is going to be a long generational battle. But we can seed revolutionary ideology into important places, then that can disseminate then into the masses and control and change the culture in that way. They're absolutely right, of course. And we've seen that hugely. But even, the school system, John Dewey was, the father of modern education.
Dewey Decimal System,
hugely Hegelian.
Yes.
He went to Russia, I think in the 30s, to and realize that this is what we need to model our education system after. And so he really effectively, changed our understanding of education to be devoid of the transcendent, for one thing, that everything becomes about utility. Our beauty, goodness, truth, all those things are really subjugated under what is useful for the sake of moving society to the next stage in the name of progress, which in itself is a Hegelian idea.
Well, I was hoping you could kind of take us through, because Hegelian dialectic.
Yeah.
People talk about this and it sounds really nerdy, and people listening right now will be like, oh gosh, this philosophy. But it explains so much.
It does.
Of how our culture has been getting weirder and weirder and weirder. This progress, the progressive, they're following Hegel's playbook.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
so the idea is
whenever you get there, do it. But
right.
Maybe you can walk us through that.
Yeah.
Hey guys, real quick, we noticed 80% of you that watch the episodes are not subscribed. So please do me the favor and subscribe and hit the bell for notification. That helps you get the content, but it also helps this amazing stuff get spread to other people just like you. Thanks for your help. Now let's dive back in.
So when people often say, you have to be on the right side of history, and that's history with a capital H. And I think we think that's just a common saying, but actually that is Hegelian. That is the Hegelian dialectic. So the idea being that society is sort of like an organism that is sort of discovering and building and developing itself.
Evolution.
Yeah.
It's a historical evolution of culture and society, right?
That's right. Yeah. And that, the way that we progress is through, two opposing forces, highlighting the oppositional aspect of them, letting them come into conflict. And, through that conflict, you arrive at sort of the next stage. And then that stage will have internal contradictions that themselves will come into conflict. And then you keep bringing out the conflict in order to get to the ultimate society.
And so like their words are like, you have a thesis.
Yeah.
That's like a cultural belief.
What things are, the way
What
things are.
right.
Yeah. Status quo.
Status quo. And then you have an antithesis, an antithesis. I think it's antithesis.
Yeah.
And then those things, that's the conflict theory, right? And that's like status quo, and then something wacky on the outside is challenging that, it's fighting that status quo. And then they kind of meet in the middle after they work their conflict out, and that's the synthesis.
Yeah.
And now that's the new status quo.
Yes.
And then it does it again and again, and that's how culture and society keeps evolving.
Yeah.
And so saying you want to be on the right side of history means you don't want to be part of the status quo.
Right.
You want to be part of, I guess, the synthesis or the antithesis, which is, pushing it further in progress.
Yeah.
And society's evolving, right? I mean, so I guess that's...
Well, one way to particularize it is that, I think you can see this really clearly with men and women. So, in the light of the faith, we understand men and women are different, but we are called to live in harmony with one another. That those differences should be an invitation into mystery, into sort of gratitude for what the other brings to the table, into sort of the sense that not everything can be known. Some things are veiled, and that's beautiful. And that God's nature Himself, He is complex. He's simple, but He's also mysterious. And so we are two different expressions of His love. We see in the icon of male and female. In the reductive lens of conflict theory, that difference is only and always in competition and conflict. And so I think it's one of the fascinating things is that you're seeing, in some ways, the conflict theory play out in men and women now. So feminism obviously has, been a force for so many terrible things that went from abortion to, promiscuity, the sexual, and the guise of the sexual feminism and empowering women. We had the sexual revolution and all this license. And as we are kind of reacting to that and seeing that conflict play out, then, there can be an instinct to kind of, in a reactionary way, go to like a masculinism,
right.
The manosphere, all these toxic other things. And so you see that, insofar as the pendulum is swinging from one to the other, it's only presenting very surface, superficial avatars of the richness and depth that is contained within the masculine and feminine. And so insofar as it stays on the superficial, it's a triumph of conflict theory itself. It doesn't almost matter whose side is seemingly triumphant, be it man or woman, insofar as we're only talking about them in conflict. We're triumphing the Hegelian conflict theory. And so you're eradicating sort of the depth of nature and finality, the four causes, insofar as you're keeping things on the level of the superficial, and you're sort of losing the whole plot. And so this is the wisdom of the church, is that we have such a deeper understanding of all these concepts that allow for the mystery, allow for sort of the nuances and, all of the richness and the depth, but it's not reactionary. And I think that's kind of the role of what we need now, is that, we're in this time that seems like we're transitioning in certain ways from, no, excuse the language, transitioning, I don't mean that in a trans way, but where things are changing and people, the young generation in particular, is open to all sorts of different things. And so, including a return to things that are very orthodox and a return to the faith. And so I think that that needs to be not discouraged, but deepened and directed so that it doesn't remain in the realm of the superficial.
No, that's awesome. Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much.